Senate Republicans just unveiling their stimulus bill. Let's bring in House Republican Whip Steve Scalise. Congressman, thanks for joining us again on the show.
Yep,
I know we're just getting some broad strokes now about what's in this bill. Good to see you as well. Do you have any state and local government relief included?
Well, there were a number of things that are in the bill that would help at the local level, especially when you look at school aid. You know, that's right now the big debate, or, you know, are schools going to reopen or not? I've been in meetings with medical professionals that have talked about the importance of safely reopening schools as opposed to just allowing the online schooling. So I know for hand sanitizer, masks for schools, there is already money available in the monies we sent out in the CARES Act that schools can use for that. But I think in Mitch McConnell's bill in the Senate, there'd be over $100 billion additional money there. But, you know, you talk about state aid, we definitely can't be bailing out states that had problems prior to COVID. Our focus ought to be getting businesses back up and running, safely reopening schools, making sure that there's liability reform, those types of things.
But don't you want to make sure that there aren't sort of mass layoffs of people that work for state and local governments, like police officers and firefighters? I mean, those jobs are at risk as this is, you know, put a serious hole in the state finances and state funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you go back to the CARES Act, we put $150 billion in place for states, and there's not a single state that spent all of that money. So clearly we've been concerned about states, but we're also concerned about safely reopening the economy and safely getting kids back into the classroom. And there are really good protocols for how to do that. Groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics have put out really good guidelines. And if schools need assistance there's money in place for that. But we need to make sure that the money, there's over $500 billion that we appropriated in Congress that hasn't been spent yet. Let's make sure that money's working. And if we can work smarter for families, for states, let's make that money work smarter, more flexible. And there's a lot of talk about that as well.
Congressman, we're seeing $200 per week in that unemployment benefit boost, down from $600. Is that right? And would you be willing to increase it a bit? It's clear from comments from Senator Schumer at the moment on the floor that he thinks there needs to be more.
Well, you know, we have seen from a lot of our small business owners that are trying to bring their workers back. We ought to be encouraging people to get back to work where they can. And yet you hear, whether it's there, whether it's in nursing homes, they're saying the costs are up dramatically. They can't even afford to bring workers back because with the $600 enhanced benefit, 5 out of 6 workers are making more money not going back to work than going back to work. That's not the kind of incentive you want to place.
Congressman, the numbers don't necessarily add up. That might be true. There might be select examples of that. There's still 15 million people that have lost their jobs since March, therefore through no fault of their own, and there aren't 15 million jobs on offer for them.
Well, but you have had a lot of businesses that have said they can't bring their workers back, or they can't bring all of their workers back. It's a real problem. So what's a fair amount? What is the amount to properly do it? I don't think anybody would argue, some might, that you should pay people more money when they're not working than if they were going back to work, if the job is there available for them. But it's a problem. It's a real problem that you're seeing, whether it's in hospitals, nursing homes, clearly in a lot of restaurants. We've heard this over and over again. It's not just some isolated incident.
Just want to quickly go back to the state and local government issue, because I think this is going to be a real fight. I mean, the Democrats want to provide relief. A lot of the governors have said they really, really need it. And this whole idea, you said that you don't want to bail out states that haven't managed their finances well. I mean, the airlines got money and used a lot of their previous cash flow to buy back stock. You could argue that they didn't necessarily manage their business prudently, but you bailed out the airlines and a lot of other businesses that maybe didn't do the best job managing for a crisis. So why are state and local governments different?
Well, state and local governments got $150 billion. That's more money than you've seen some of these industries get. Like, we know we want a thriving airline industry, and right now I flew on a plane to come back here today to Washington, and the plane was less than half full. You know, so you know that the problem's there. States are having their own issues, and so we've been helping states. $150 billion is still a lot of money, and like I said, there's not a single state that's spent all of the money we sent them. So I know you've got some states yelling and screaming for more money when they haven't spent the money we already sent them. The best way to resolve this is to work to safely reopen their economies. We know that there are spikes, but we're also knowing no hospital system in any state is overrun. We're working with those states that have issues. We're giving more testing equipment. Every day we're increasing our testing capacity. You're looking at the therapies that are being developed that President Trump talked about today, where we're very close to a vaccine. You talk about a revolutionary change where we put a lot of money, by the way, in these relief packages into making sure agencies like the FDA, the National Institute of Health, and CMS can go and try to find a cure for COVID-19, and they're almost there. Phase 3 of testing for vaccines, remdesivir and other drugs that are therapies. That's revolutionary for any kind of virus that we're that close this early in terms of, relatively speaking, how a virus works. And so let's make sure that we're putting the focus in all of these places, not just one. But for somebody to say they didn't get any relief when they got over 150 billion and they haven't spent all that money, let's stay focused on where the problems are and get our economy safely back open and get kids safely back in schools.
Congressman, thanks for joining us.